Okay, we have to wait for a moment. The clerk's phone is not, our computer isn't working.
Ooh.
Yeah. Actually,
Maybe she unmuted herself.
Daphne, try it now.
I'm not getting sound from my computer, but I called in from my cell phone. So we're going to
Okay.
go with that.
Okay, because I had muted you, but in any event, please call the roll.
Trustee Chamberlain.
Here.
Trustee Clayton.
Here.
Trustee Goldstein.
Here.
Trustee Haber.
Visually here.
Trustee Hollander.
Here.
Trustee Jamerson.
Here.
President Norris.
Here. All right, we have a full board this evening. I hope everyone is well. The first item of business is approval of minutes from the Board of Trustees meeting from April 7th, 2020. Today, the second change went out. Are there any other additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
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 Did we make a motion?
Didn't we need a
Oh,
motion?
you're right. Ah, boy, I'm trying to shortcut this entirely too much. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, now I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none opposed, the minutes are approved. Village ecologist report is not here. Village treasurer's report.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I have the updated information from JP Morgan, and just to give you a flavor of what the current rates are out there, the benchmark treasuries for 1 year is 0.13%, and the 2 year is 0.2%. The 3 year is 0.25%. So the rates are back to years ago when they were almost non-existent. Our current portfolio is yielding 2.18%. So we've got a good, a tremendous advantage over where current rates are, and we did have some maturities come due, but the average life of our portfolio is only about 1 year, just slightly over 1 year. So we're probably going to be renewing things at low rates, and we're going to probably stay short term with that too. When I talk to Danielle, what we've got right now is we've got about $500,000 available, which we did not kind of roll over into the current yields just because it was in the thick of everything, and we thought it was more a panic reaction at that point in time. We will have, by the end of May, about a total of $1.2 million maturing. So I guess for the first time, we'll decide whether to stay in cash or to take advantage of what's out there. There are some municipalities that have high grades, and I don't know how much we want to go into it, but they're yielding about a point over these current rates that I mentioned of 0.2. So we can probably get 1.2, 1.3 on those municipalities, which we're authorized to do. We just have to be very careful about the actual availabilities. So all in all, it's very healthy. There's not been any defaults. Our laddering is working. We always want things coming due, and we will have about 2 or 3 million in the next by June. Hopefully we'll see a little tick up by then in the rates, but the long-term prognosis, at least for the rest of this year, is that we'll probably stay below the 1% level, almost no matter what happens economically. So that's where we're at.
Well, could we buy oil, since that seems to be at a negative number right now? It might go up.
Yeah, I think they pay you to drive into the gas station now.
Oh, if only. Does anybody have any questions for Hal? Okay, then. Engineers report.
No report.
Director of Community Services report. We're having to sort of maneuver around here a little.
No report.
That was a long suspense. Zoning Board of Appeals did not meet. Plan Commission report. I have to unmute you, Bruce. I turned you off.
Plan Commission did not meet.
Okay. Police report.
The activity since the last meeting is in everybody's packet. Of note, our traffic stops and citations and ordinance violations are way down compared to last year. That's all coronavirus related, obviously. We are ahead of last year in DUIs only because we started off this year on a record pace for DUIs, but we've only had one since the stay-at-home order started. And then also on April 18th, we took a report of a residential burglary that occurred on the 17th in the 1000 block of Port Wine, and that was a ruse burglary, which I did send out a community alert on. And to date, we've done 12 birthday parades for children who have been at home. And that's all I have.
Any questions for the chief? Not village attorney's report?
Only to let the board know that the Lake County Tax Extension Office did send out, they do an annual mailing to everyone or email asking us to verify all of the tax levies that are going to be collected in the forthcoming year. So we did go through those and check them all the special service areas particularly. And we also, the mayor and I just worked on signing the letter with the auditor to do the year-end report for 2019. And we just checked it to make sure it was consistent with the proposal that we had from a year ago. That's all I have.
Any questions for the village attorney?
Yes, have the hearings stopped for the last month? We used to have every other week or once a month.
The hearings, you mean the?
Yeah. Yes. If we do write a ticket, we write it for the next scheduled hearing, but then Joanne sends out a continuance to everybody, letting them know it's continued into May, and if we have to, we'll continue into June and so on.
Yeah, that would be in excess of the gathering size that we're trying to maintain. So, okay. Any other questions for the village attorney? Then moving on to information items. The NSSRA report is in the packet. Chris was originally going to be with us, but we've had to reschedule it. If you have any questions, please forward them on and I'll make sure that she is able to attend the next meeting. Then the Finance Committee recommendation on actions to address. I hope you all got the amended packet with Mike's presentation in it. If not, Mike, you can do your share screen, so let me turn it over to you.
Can you see the presentation? Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, but it's hard to hear you.
Okay, I'll move closer. So this is follow-up from the March 3rd meeting. First of all, just to bring you up to date on the current situation. We were running in February and January.
Mike, you're very muffled. Very muffled. Does everybody else hear the same muffled?
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody have a copy of the presentation? I'll just take this off the screen and walk you through it.
Mike, we're going to get you a microphone. I think I have one at home. I'll dip it in disinfectant.
Okay, hold on.
If everybody will mute except Trustee Clayton, let's try that to begin with. And then Mike, please get as close as you can to the microphone.
Okay, can everybody see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes, they should be able to, and we could hear you there better.
So let's start with. Oh,
I'm sorry, Mike, I can't really hear you.
all right, I'm gonna try to just take you through it. Hold on, I gotta get back to the meeting.
Why doesn't Mike just call in with his cell phone versus his computer?
That's exactly what we were going to suggest. That Mike, why don't you try dialing in and see if that can work, because that's what Daphne ended up having to do.
Okay, hang on a second.
Well, Mike, while you're trying to get in, let me go forward with the rest of this, and we'll work from there with the rest of the meeting and get back to you as you're able to talk more. The Lake County is still considering the possible delay in collecting property tax due to COVID. They had a meeting. They did not have a final vote of the Finance Committee. And my sources tell me there is some undercurrent of people who do want to try to do that. The problem, of course, is that that's going to mess up everybody else in the world, from us to the schools, et cetera. So I'm not sure how it's going to work. I'll just tell you that as a warning that that is out there.
John, if you have an opportunity.
Okay. Can you tell who was trying to talk?
Yeah, I can't hear Bruce either, and there's a background noise coming from somewhere.
Yeah, Bruce, can you?
Can I go now?
I think that happens when you have somebody trying to get in with two different microphones. The one from
Next to each other? Okay. So we're messing up Mr. Clayton terribly this evening. And he's getting next to the rest of us. So, Mike, can you turn your computer?
I think if Mike just doesn't try and share his screen and we can just all look at our own
That could work too.
materials, then I think we'll hear him, because we could hear him before that way.
Yeah. Mike, can you seem to have... Mike Clayton, why don't you, let's try Mike Haber's suggestion and just refer people to the page of the presentation.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're still a little garbled, but we can at least hear you.
Okay, I'm on page 1 of the presentation. So the idea was to start out by bringing everyone up to speed on the current situation. In January and March, our sales tax revenue was running about 20% behind what was budgeted. In March, the latest financial statements indicate that we were actually slightly ahead of budget. With that all being said, it seems prudent from the committee standpoint to plan on a total shortfall of about 50% of the budgeted sales tax revenue. And that changes our estimate of the deficit for this year by another $292,050. So it goes from 827,474 to a little over 1.1 million. That includes the grant portion of the campus plan, so the board implement that. The full implementation of the plan, including all the alternatives that went out for bid, would increase that another 300,000. So the total deficit for the year would be closer to 1.4 million. With that as kind of a summary of the present situation, one of the ideas that was discussed at the financial workshop was to try to see if we could bring the police tax and the police department expenses more in line with the original concept for the police tax, which was, as I understand it, to fully fund the police department. So we looked at a couple ways to think about that. One way was to say, let's do it all by 2021. Let's have the police tax fully fund the police department. If we were to try to do that next year, we would have to increase the police tax by 300%. So we thought that possibly was not feasible. So we then looked at what if we try to catch up to the forecasted police expense by 2025? And that's shown in Exhibit 1 on page 1. And that would require a 33% per year increase in the police tax. So the committee further deliberated on that and believes that the best approach is to start closing the gap with a 50% increase in the police tax in 2021, and then by 15% a year after that. And that's shown in Exhibit 2. And you can see then that what's happening is we're very slowly beginning to narrow the gap between the tax and expense. But what we're doing is holding steady the current situation so that as police expenses increase, the deficit between the police tax and police expense would not increase. So that is what the committee is going to recommend. A 50% jump in 2021 in the police tax and then 15% per year after that. So if we roll that into on page 2, the overall plan, and take a look at that, the plan still contemplates a 2-cent per gallon municipal gasoline tax by 2021. We're still holding the internet tax, any street conversion savings should that go forward, or any favorable results from any increased retail, marketing, or annexation, or so on. We're leaving all of that as risk reserves. So, or alternatively, if the future is a little brighter than it might look right now, we might be able to reduce that 15% per year in the police tax increases from 2022 to 2025. Just to give you a little flavor of what that 50% increase means to an average household, that's an increase in the police tax of about $200. And then 15% thereafter. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next page. So one final thought is that I think it's useful to think of the deficit as having 2 components, one of which is structural, which is, of course, the reduced sales tax that we're getting because we have a taxpayer leave. And as that goes forward, the other effects could be considered transitory. And the effects of the virus or any long-term investments that we choose to make in 2021 won't be carried over going forward into future years. So just for your frame of reference, it appears that approximately $300,000 of the deficit in 2020 is structural, and all the rest is transitory. So while the results for this year may be disheartening, I think there's some reason for the optimism that we can plan for the future in a way that produces financial health for the village. So Exhibit 3 then is the recommended plan. The top line represents the deficits going forward should we not increase the police tax at all. And also, this has been adjusted for a 50% reduction in sales tax revenue, and it includes in sales tax revenue in 2020, and it includes full implementation of the campus. So as you can see, the deficits would reduce substantially in 2021, but then continue to grow. So the effect of increasing the police tax 50% in 2021 and then 15% per year after that is shown on the next line. What that results in increased proceeds shows on the next line. And then now you have the adjusted net general fund after the property tax increases. And you can see we're close to break even in 2021. And then we start generating positive spreads in the future years. If we add in the municipal gasoline tax implemented halfway through 2021, and this should be, if Thornton's goes in and their estimates of their volumes are correct, this should be a very conservative number. Then we come down to the bottom line, which is showing us in 2021 a surplus, and the surplus is gradually growing. If you accumulate the surpluses from 2021 to 2025, that results in just under $1 million of surpluses, which offsets everything but the about $400,000 of what we would incur this year, even considering full implementation of the campus. So that is the recommended plan for by the committee. And then on the next page, on page 3, we'll show you what the impact on an average household is with a fair market value of $750,000, and we're inflating the assessed valuation by 3% per year. So the percentage increases are shown in the middle there, and then what the Riverwoods tax rate would be changing to as we move forward in future years. And then in dollars, that's shown under the Riverwoods tax line. The annual increase year over year is shown on the next line, and the entire cumulative increase over 5 years would be $702.61 for an average household. And then to show you where that puts us compared to our neighbors in terms of tax rate, we would be going from 0.138 to 0.491. That would still leave us below everyone else except Lincolnshire, and all the data for these surrounding communities is 2018 data. So with the expectation that Lincolnshire would be raising their tax rates and our neighbors may be doing the same, then we would still be, if not absolutely at the bottom, second from the bottom in terms of our overall tax rate. We would be generating surpluses, and it seems digestible by our residents.
Okay, general comments or questions from the board? I mean, this is something that we're not obviously voting on tonight. It's only information and discussion. And I think we all have to mull this over. I do think if we do go forward, we emphasize that we actually were authorized to have this kind of a tax rate for the police department, and that we're still only funding about 2/3 at most of the police cost, and talk also in terms of the actual dollars per household. As we all know, saying a 50% tax increase sounds horrible.
Yeah, but it's $187 for an average household.
Right. So, and obviously that can vary depending on the tax equalized assessed value, et cetera, but that's what we have to work from right now. So are there any questions this evening?
I have one. Oh, did you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
turned myself off. Go ahead.
Well, that's a good place for you to be, John. I just have a question about the property tax rates that you listed on the last exhibit at the bottom. I see that Deerfield says not including the Park District. But what about the Library District and all the other things that we don't have? Are those rates exact comparisons to our rates? I mean, Buffalo Grove has a Park District and they have a library, and
Okay, Buffalo or River, yeah, slow down, Norris. Deerfield has separate taxing bodies that they list for the Park District and the library. If you add in the Park District, it's about 50 to 60% more, and the library is a relatively small number, but it still would be larger. Deerfield is closer to the Buffalo Grove number by the time you get done with all of the peripheral things that do get added or could be added in.
So the Buffalo Grove number probably has a park district in it and a library district.
I can't guarantee that as I sit here this evening, but I believe so. I believe they were more comprehensive in their bill, as was Highland Park. Highland Park is about 9%.
And then Bannockburn, I don't know anything. Do they have a library? I don't think so, do they?
No, I think they might be in the Deerfield district. I don't know. I'd have to see where the boundaries fall.
Okay, or or a park district. They don't have, do they have a park district?
No.
Okay, all right.
And Buffalo Grove, as the chief pointed out, does have its own municipal fire department.
Which might be in that 9.2.
I believe it is.
Okay.
Again, I mean, you think about it, you're 4 times or 9 times what ours is, 8 times. So obviously that's a lot more money and it's a much larger town.
Well, when we go to publicize whatever it is that we're going to do, we should make sure that our comparisons are apples to apples as best we can.
Yes, we will go through it again and we'll get the most recent tax bill to make sure we're as close as we can. But generally the Deerfield, Bannockburn, Lincolnshire are the ones we know are. Buffalo Grove will have to break out some more and make sure that it's clear what's what. But yes, and schools, et cetera, are all part of it too. So.
And then I have another question. The adjusted net general fund in Exhibit 3, I'm assuming there's some escalation in the figures for the expenses and or maybe the revenue in the general fund over those 5 years?
Yeah, each one of actually the forecast was done line item by line item. And if you want, I can give you the detail behind that. But each, Bob, I don't know if Bob's still on the call, but Bob went through each line and he inflated each line by a different percentage amount depending on what the history looked like and what he felt that the future projection looked like. So each one of the revenue items, expense items, so on and so forth, was forecasted independently.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay.
Before we leave that, are there any questions about the summary of revenue and expenses that were also included in the packet? I was just going to run through just really quickly the variance to the budget, just so you have some understanding of what the numbers are. There's a column called variance to budget. And if you look down through that column, some of the significant numbers, the administrative variance is 27,000 below budget. That's due primarily to the sales tax in January and February, some timing and some miscellaneous category changes. The police department variance to budget and revenue is primarily due to the fact that we haven't collected any police tax yet, so it's a timing issue. The chief did mention earlier that some of the citations and so on are also down, but that number there through March is primarily the police tax situation. With regard to the expenditures under administration, the 174,000, that's campus related and water tower related. So those were expected. The police department being 29,000 below expected expenses. That's a timing issue. The personnel are right at 25% of the budget, which is what you'd expect. We haven't expensed annual insurance costs yet, so that will probably come back, fall into line. And if you look down at the water fund and sewer fund, it's not you have to look at the cash report to see what the actual balances are. But in the water fund, we have 2.4 million. And the sewer fund, we have 1.4 million. So those funds are healthy. And that's it.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, thanks, Mike. And Cheryl and Nathan, who I don't think is on here. But
John, can you hear me? It's Bruce.
yes,
Just two quick things about the property tax. One is that if I'm going by memory, you and I had been talking about this. The police levy, when the referendum was passed, had a maximum rate. We were so far below it that it never occurred to me to think about it. But I think the maximum rate in the referendum was 0.22. You and I were looking at it a
I'd
couple.
have to look. I thought it was much higher than that.
Um,
Because there's been a
so-
couple of them. We'd have to make sure we're on the last one. It went down, and then like 6 months later, they doubled or tripled it. So
I'm talking about 1986 when the village actually passed a referendum from the police levy.
right. No, I understand what you're saying, Bruce. And there have been a total of 3 police levy referenda.
In the village of Riverwoods? Okay,
Yes.
I didn't know that. Well,
There was a
Um,
larger one, then they cut it, and then within about 6 months to a year, they had another one saying, oops.
okay, so the point only is that as we work through the recommendation of the Finance Committee, if we find that we want the property tax to go above the amount that's allowed for the police levy, if that's an issue, it can be the general corporate levy. We have all the authority in the world to do that. But if you want to couch the tax as a police levy, it's just something to think about.
Okay.
And the other comment I would just make about any discussion about deferring property or I don't know when you're on with other elections. We have, and I'm sure everyone else is thinking about this, we have debt service, we have bond issues. And so if at least that amount can somehow, I'm just kind of wondering what's going to happen when we have, if they tell people to delay making payments. We have bond payments, I think, due August 1. Just to put that in your mind.
Oh, you mean you're talking about the county delaying? Yes, it would be another one of those, geez, it sounds nice, but the ramifications across the board may be a little more of a catastrophe than they're expecting.
So they're follow-on effects, that's all.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on the financial issue? Bruce, aren't we able to change that tax now since we're home rule, even if it was labeled that when we had the referendum, or does that remain binding?
That's an interesting thing since we're home rule, whether we can just change the police levy. I'll have to look at that.
Because I thought that sort of changed the whole playing field once we went home rule, because otherwise it had to all go through the other.
Well, it's a funny thing. I mean, we could obviously do a general corporate property tax levy without a referendum or anything. The question is whether we can amend the results of a referendum. I don't know.
I hear you. Well, there's something else for you to do in your spare time, as well
Okay.
as that report that you're working on to get out about roads.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. On a bright note, and we all need one, got a letter yesterday about 7 o'clock in the evening, which is an interesting time to get the email. FEMA has, I'm not sure the correct language, but we got a better rating on our flood issues. So those of you who are truly in the flood plain and have serious flood insurance, like Trustee Jamerson, you should be getting a 20% discount in your flood insurance. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Engineer, but
we moved from 10% to 20%. So
okay, sorry. You're still getting 10% better. It's still a significant savings, I'm sure, for those who are in that area.
John, I think that's only if you have a policy after May 1st.
Well, yes, this is for the upcoming
For next year.
right.
I have a question on the finances. With the change in driving and gas, Bruce, have you got any feeling as to whether or not Thornton's might delay their proposed station by another year or two?
Not so far. I'm sure that they are thinking about it. They were they took a little bit of time to get their escrow money in. They were asking for time, at least just when all this hit, just to delay that. And I said, just let's get going on the escrow. I'm sure you can come back to the board and talk about things when we get there. They have I think it was 150-day due diligence period with some extensions, 45-day extensions after that. So they had a long period of time to sort of digest facts. But I will reach out to them and ask them. I haven't heard anything specific yet.
I was just in contact with their engineer who's was asking for some of the CubeSmart drawings, so they're at least still pursuing the due diligence.
Pardon me. Okay, are there any other questions going backwards that we want to cover? Okay, then.
No, but if
Yes.
I could, I just wanted to mention the e-blast we sent out about the restaurants. I wrote an article after I had talked to all of our restaurant owners, and it explains their hours and what they're doing to protect customers. But I really wanted to point out that King Shabu Shabu not only has donated hundreds of meals to hospitals, but they're now offering a grocery delivery service. So if you're interested in that, you can contact them.
And as long as we're talking about the restaurants, we're hopeful that we may get an inspection of Sweet Basil Friday. At least the fire department's going to be there. So we're making progress toward trying to get them up and operating. And that will be a good thing too. Yes, Rick?
I have a question about that. I happened to notice when I drove by in the last couple of days that they put, they added a sign sometime back on the bottom of the sign on Deerfield Road, which we told them they could. But it's illuminated from inside, which I'm not sure, it's not on yet, but I can tell by the way there's a piece of electrical conduit going up into the bottom of it that is, it's electrified. And I'm not sure that was what we authorized, and I'm not sure that's what the special use says. The existing sign has two ground lights that shine up on it like this, but this sign is backlit. Their sign is backlit. So we need to check and see, if that is allowable, and Bruce might be able to tell us that, Bruce Huvard. And if so, the second question that I have is, did they get a permit for the electrical work, which my guess is no. So anyways, just something I noticed yesterday and I didn't bring it up to anybody else, so.
Yeah, just, you should be able to talk loud enough.
Rick, I was going to check all that at the final. They didn't call for any separate sign inspection for any of the signage, canopies, any of it. I was going to check it on the final. So I don't know exactly what the drawings say off the top of my head.
Well, if you remember, we had quite a discussion about signage there and what they could and couldn't do. And it went back to the special use ordinance for that shopping center. And we allowed them to actually make that sign bigger, I think, because they wanted, that giant jumbotron out there on the street. But I don't think we allowed them to make it backlit. And, I don't know that it's a big deal, but it's not, I don't, what we as a village agreed to.
Rick, my recollection is totally in agreement with you.
Nope. You're fading out, whoever.
Okay, well, I was trying to give Rob more space. I'll slide back over. I'm in total agreement as to my recollection with yours. They wanted the backlighting and we'd said, no, you could illuminate. That was within the rules. So we'll have to double check it and see what's what.
I know the separate permit was above and beyond the building permit for the renovation, and that's what I bring out on the inspection to see if it's compliant with what you're talking about.
All right, as long as we don't let it.
That's right. No, it hasn't been forgotten. No.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As long as we're talking about permits, can I?
Yep.
Do something?
Yep. Jump in, Mike.
Driving along Deerfield Road, I noticed that the home that had that wood fence, all the wood debris, now has another curb cut out onto Deerfield Road.
Mike, I think that curb cut was always there. They just aren't supposed to be using it.
Well, it's brand new now. They just reconcreted it. It's brand new,
Oh,
and it
that's-
goes right to the garage, and it is in the middle of what used to be their fence. You know,
Right.
a wood fence.
okay.
Actually, it's not brand new, Mike. It is, it's been, and I asked Pat about this, and he can probably chime in on this, but I asked when they were pouring it, which was I want to say last fall.
Really? It looks so new.
Yeah, but they were pouring it last fall, and I asked about that, and Pat said that there's always been a curb cut there, and it just wasn't as noticeable as it is now that there's concrete.
Okay.
So,
Is that the curb cut that the Lake County was going to not allow, or was a different curb cut?
No, that's the same curb cut that
Right.
Lake County was going to not put in their new plan, and it may not even be on their drawings, but. which
We
is-
pointed out, Trustee Haber, that was not a permitted curb cut. The county is going to put a curb there if and when Deerfield Road ever gets done.
So whether they allow the curb cut now that the concrete is poured, who knows?
Pat, you're mysteriously silent. Is there anything my engineer wants to add?
I would just throw out that was the original driveway for that lot. That lot's not part of the Timbers subdivision. So that house predates Timberwood Drive. And somehow when they did the subdivision, that property got access also to Timberwood Drive. So technically there's nothing illegal about their access to Deerfield Road. But of course, it remains to be seen. The county's access regulation says if you have access to another street, we don't have to give you access to our street. So it's still, it'll be up to the county when they do Deerfield Road whether or not they keep that access.
Okay. Any other general questions? If not, then a little bit of COVID update. Some of this I couldn't include because the governor's phone call was at 4. I sent you, I hope I got the right updated because the county got it out a little late. Totals for the month of April. You can see that it's pretty hard to predict anything off of it. It looks like we may be dropping a little. Certainly it seems relatively level. Let us hope that's the case. That being said, the governor said that we are probably 2 weeks away, though, from peaking for the state. The original thought had been April 16th, and now we're looking for 2 more weeks. He did not announce any more rules as far as face masks or distancing, et cetera, as was expected. Good news is that the number of cases has slowed down on its increase, where we were up to over 200 or more a day, and we're down to about 100 a day statewide. We have only 70% of the ICU beds filled, which is better than they thought it would be, i.e. there are 30% still available. Granted, they are not all where maybe we want them to be. Lake County is on they were full, they may be again. I didn't get any update on that. The respirators, we have a surplus. I hate to use that word. We are not using all of the respirators, let me word it that way. And the state surgeon general indicated that there were a sufficient number on hand, and we actually have the testing materials, which is, if you've been paying attention, was a problem Abbott had. They had a great machine, but the solution for keeping the testing, et cetera, wasn't necessarily good. But apparently we do have that. They're going to be increasing testing. They're going to do testing of all nursing homes and senior facilities and staff. That is an increase from where they have been before. So they're looking now, their goal is to try and look at target populations As I think most of you are aware and have seen from what's been put out, approximately 80% of the fatalities have been in the 70 and above age group. And of those, I think 80% have been people with pre-existing conditions. But certainly those in nursing homes and those facilities would be the ones then who would be most exposed. So won't say there's a light at the end of the tunnel. If there was one, I'd revert back to my Vietnam era reference that it's probably a freight train coming at us, but it looks like maybe things aren't getting worse. They're just not necessarily getting better. So let's hope that that's an accurate representation. Does anyone else have any general comments to make? If not, are there any visitors wishing to address the board? We don't have any emails, so I need a motion for approval of bills.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any additions, corrections, or questions? I know there were some, and I think we've had those answered already. If not, I need a roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein.
Aye.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Take that as an aye. We can't hear you, Henry.
Aye.
Thank you. And Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Moving on to action items then, since we were just speaking of Colonial Court and the shops, the resolution authorizing the mayor to waive special use fee charges to Colonial Court and shops for 60 days. I think we talked about this a bit before. You saw their representation that they pass it along on a per square foot basis. You should note that half of the shopping center is empty, so I would assume that means they're keeping half of that money. But they have indicated that they would pass it along directly in rebating or reducing the rent to the individual stores. While I'd like to see more of it going through, the idea of trying to work out some way to regulate it and check on it, of course, is difficult. I do think it would be a good thing for those businesses. Let's face it, most of them are going to have to be stressed. And I certainly would send out a letter telling all of the tenants what we were doing and saying what a wonderful thing it was their landlord had asked for this reduction that he said he was passing through to them. So certainly there's a way to try and make sure that it really gets there. I can't guarantee that they'll live up to it. Bruce had offered to write out an agreement, but I think we'd spend more money getting that all done and dicker around on it long enough that it wouldn't be very useful. So Mike, I saw you click on right away. Go.
So it's $2,000 a month, right?
Right.
And so if it's $2,000 a month and they do it on a square footage basis, we are talking about nothing going to an individual owner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually like virtually like $1. I mean, maybe not even that.
It's not a big deal one way or the other, Mike, to any of us. It's as much a gesture saying we're trying to do something. So,
but it wasn't from us. It came from them, right?
The tenant, the landlord called and requested, would we waive it? I said, I certainly would like to help the businesses there, but I would bring it to the board, and the board asked them to see just what was going to happen for sure. You see the email that I got back, and that's where we sit. So if the board is comfortable, fine. If not, I don't think it'll necessarily make or break anybody. But Cheryl, were you able to come up with any solution? You and I had talked about it. The problem of trying to make sure it goes to the right people.
Right. My concern, so I'm all for trying to help out our businesses as well as our other residents as much as possible. And you all saw the email, it was a little vague. So it wasn't clear to me exactly where this money would be going. So I would like to see more specifics. I'm not saying that we can't do this, but what I would like to do also is that we say, okay, yeah, we will do this, but we'd like a written confirmation from you that the monies we're waiving are all going to go to the lessees in the form of a special permit fee waiver. And then if our mayor is going to send out a letter and that says there's to be receiving this and they don't receive it, then they'll know to contact us and say, hey, we didn't get that. Because my concern is that essentially what this is, it's not going to have the desired effect, that the money will go to the landlord rather than to the lessor instead of the lessees, and those are the ones that are really hurting. I wouldn't mind also saying, just as a communication to them, we hope that they are taking that they're taking additional measures to help out their tenants in whatever way they can. But I really would like us to have something more specific from them that this money's really going to the tenants.
Well, part of the problem though, oh, Rick, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. You can finish. Okay. Well, I was going to say I agree with Trustee Chamberlain, and I also agree with Trustee Haber. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of money, and I would want to make sure that if they're going to base it on a square foot basis, which is a fine way to do it, they should base it on the rented square footage, not the square footage that's in the whole place, because they're probably close to 50% vacancy now. And if they do it by square foot, they can say, well, these 6 spaces are not rented, so we're keeping that money. I wouldn't, I could see that happening. Part of me wants to say that, they own the 37 acres. They own 2 of the 2 shopping centers we have. For the $4,000, if it means our relationship will be better with them in the future, it might be worth some or all of that. I don't know that the relationship will be any better. I know that Henry's done a lot of work trying to communicate with them, and I think that Henry might be able to fill us in, but I think that may have fallen off the radar screen from their side. So it may not be worth it at all. But if we do give it to them, it would be. I think it's important to find out that the tenants actually got the benefit of it and not the landlord.
Well, there is an argument that the landlord is suffering and will not be able to rent as soon either. So if we didn't have this particular landlord that we think has a tendency to, shall we say, not necessarily deal with things in the same way we would like them to be dealing with it, are reinvesting in the property, I understand. But Rick, like you and I said too, how do we enforce it? Even if I have a nice written contract and I find out that they aren't passing the money through, am I going to take them to court? Do we get our money back out of it? I'd love to be able to take it to.
We have an administrative court we could take.
Well, that's what I said. I'd want to check on that. I'll defer to counsel over here if he thinks that. And certainly, does anybody, either of the 2 or several attorneys here?
I'm not suggesting, that we're going for strict enforcement here. What I am suggesting is that we do get a commitment from them that all of this is really going to go back to the tenants. And then if they don't honor that, certainly things are going to come up again where they're going to ask us to do something else. And we can remind them of the situation that occurred if they don't abide by their agreement.
Well, the representation was orally, and obviously we all know that's not as good in writing, that it would go through. I agree with you that it's empty, and if it's per foot, they're likely to be pocketing half of it or whatever.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was part of it. Bruce?
May I just say that the idea that, we established some beneficial things along with the relationship or not, and that later on when something else comes before the board, we take that into consideration. That's really not going to be very helpful. Our job is to apply the standards that apply to a specific type of relief that's being requested based on the standards at that time. And it's not really going to be helpful to say, we don't like the way you dealt with that, and therefore we're not going to consider you under a zoning request or something else. We really have to take each matter on its own merits. Maybe a different way of approaching this is if the village wants to consider making an interest-free loan to some of the tenants and tell them that you'll apply the special use payments you receive to those loans. That's a way where you're making the assistance directly to the tenants, but yet using the funds that would otherwise be going to the tenants in a direct fashion.
If there's a way to do it without being too cumbersome, I'm perfectly in agreement to do that. Mike, I know you've been waiting. Go ahead, please.
So I'm thinking that I would rather take that $4,000 that they would normally pay us and say that when the shops are reopened, the village will spend $4,000 to advertise that the shops of Riverwoods are back open. Please come and visit our village shops. But to try and give the landlord the $2,000 or the owner the $2,000 a month and hope that he's going to do the right thing with it, I think we're making a mistake. I'd like to keep control over the $4,000, and let's commit to using that $4,000 to do something good for that village to help promote those businesses when this whole craziness is over. I think that's a much better use of the money.
Okay, I'm certainly amenable to that.
Or to Mike's point, could we just give the money to the tenants
Well, that's
directly?
kind of what Bruce was saying too as well.
Right.
So
I would prefer to do that. I like Trustee Haber's suggestion, except that one of my concerns is that the tenants who are suffering now, not that this is going to make or break them, but the tenants who are suffering and now we need the relief now, and they might not even be there to advertise that, oh, our businesses are
Okay.
back open.
I think I may have come up with something. We can tell the tenants to bring in their lease payments, and that portion which is attributable to the tax or the special use fee, we might rebate to them if they give us a request for a rebate.
So I was actually
would
going
be
to
a way to do it.
suggest that initially, but my concern was whether or not that would be any sort of administrative hassle for us, or do you think that's not?
That wouldn't be that hard as long as they bring in. It's not much different than our taxi fees are, et cetera. Council, do you see a problem with trying to do it that way? And we probably don't have to worry too much about it, but.
Well, that's in effect making a grant or a loan based on some criteria.
So you think it's legal and not going to cause a problem other than a little heartburn, maybe in a few offices that we're not quite as worried about causing some heartburn for.
Well, you're also making the assumption that somewhere in their lease, it's telling them how much of that $2,000 a month is going to the village for special protection.
Yeah.
My guess is the lease is not written that way.
I thought about that, Rick, that maybe we'll figure out another way to prorate it, tell us how many square feet at least or something. So it could be a pretty straightforward sort of thing, maybe, Mike.
Some of the tenants may have gross leases and don't even have a CAM charge.
Right.
And some may have net leases. So we don't even know if it's really going to be a pass-through or not.
They said the quote unquote that it's a direct pass-through that is on everybody's bill. But Mike, that's what they said. You and I both know that might not bear great resemblance to the real world.
I guess if I was looking at
Council.
From the standpoint of maintaining the fiscal base of the village, as Mike Haber was saying, we're not talking about very much money here. So I don't know if it makes sense for us to reach out to some of the key businesses that we would like to retain the most and find out you know, if there's, what is their situation? Do they have access to any of these other loans that are being out there? Because we may find that without a more active intervention by the village, as Cheryl was saying, those businesses are going to go.
Well, I think, you know, this might be a way to lead into that as well, because there's a lot of things out there with small business help, but we can at least tell them this is a way to get a couple of bucks now, and then we can talk with them about some of the programs that might be available to help them.
Would
Just
Cafe
to-
de Oro have any objection to this?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Would Cafe de Oro have any objection to this?
They're not paying a direct fee the same way. That I
Yes,
imagine
some of
they
those
might.
tenants aren't either.
No,
But
I
he's-
think if you devise a program for tenants, then you might want to look at all of your business tenants.
Of course, they're not tenants. They're Dioro owns it.
Businesses,
I-
you know,
If I could just agree with Trustee Haber, I think that the amounts of money that we're talking about here are so small that even the time we spent in having this conversation is probably not worth it for the board. I think if we want to put together a meaningful program for businesses that'll result in more than 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 bucks, then I think, you know, whether it's loaning them money or whatever the program is, and I'm sorry I don't have that answer off the top of my head, I don't think any administrative effort that the village puts in to save a business 50 bucks is not worth our time. And I think we should be focusing more on something really meaningful if that's what we believe is necessary.
Okay, I've heard a lot of shifting thoughts. Rick, you just clicked in,
So
please.
I just want to the Chamber of Commerce, the DBR Chamber of Commerce, and I sent this to John and he knows about it, has come up with an app on the phone for all of their businesses to advertise specials or whatever. And they've asked, Deerfield is heavily subsidizing it as usual, but they've asked us to join in, and I don't remember exactly how much the cost was. I want to say it was a couple $1,000s, but it's something similar to what Trustee Chamberlain put out, but on a constant basis. And the residents text in to 97999 or whatever that is, and it automatically sends them text messages. So that might be something we want to look at on an ongoing basis. To Trustee Clayton's comments about helping them long term. Anyways, I just thought I'd throw
You
that
know,
out.
Rick, that's actually a good suggestion because it's about 1,400, I think. Oh, there's 500 subscribers I'm getting from Jerry on the Deerfield Chamber of Commerce. So that's a pretty good market. And maybe that would be a better place to put the money, is paying for that e-blast to begin with through the chamber. As I say, I'm getting one general consensus that we don't want to just hand the money over. There are some pretty good suggestions. One is to hold it and try to throw some more into improvements later. The other is to try to put it into, say, advertising now or a direct rebate. Anybody have any? Yes, Cheryl,
I
thank
was
you.
just going to say, so first of all, I wanted to clarify before that I wasn't suggesting that we punish the landlord later. I'm saying that we be careful about our agreements with them later. I think that it's worth going ahead, even for nominal amounts, as a gesture to our businesses to go ahead and say, yes, we're going to waive this fee for you. And then maybe we want to look at the DBR app as well.
Well, if we were going to waive it, I think I'm most comfortable with having them come in and us giving them a rebate check, because that way I can control and have a better feeling for where it's going. And it does give us a chance to talk to the business owners. And I do think you're right, though, that something symbolic, like you're reaching out to them, talking to them, and putting it out right now, does help. So I certainly lean that way, but I also like the idea of targeting it, as Trustee Jamerson said, but I think that was something I know I was leaning toward recommending as well. So,
Well, this is kind of a contrarian opinion, John, but I think that if I were a business that was about to go belly up, I don't think a gesture would be helpful. I think it would be insulting. I think that if we're going to help people, we need to do it on a meaningful basis, not just make gestures.
well, Mike, we're not going to save anybody who's going belly up, but they're all going to be stressed and trying to do anything. I mean, we can just ignore it, but I'm not sure that's so good. And we're talking about being awfully short of money ourselves right now.
Well, I will say that when I talked with all of the restaurant owners, they were especially appreciative of the concept that we were going to send out information reminding our people that yes, they're open and we need your business and that sort of thing. So I think those sorts of gestures, so maybe the app, I don't know exactly how that works, would be something that they would really appreciate. But I do think though that even the rebate of the special use fee, it is just one more thing that they will understand that we are trying to support them.
Okay, well, we do have a resolution and I need to go somewhere. Is there a motion to amend the resolution? Although, I don't know, would the resolution need to be amended, Bruce, or could I simply implement it by putting it in the form of a rebate? I think the resolution might be broad enough to allow me to do that.
So if I change the screen to try and pull up the text of the resolution, I'm afraid I'll cut you all off, but I think it said you could waive the fee, and waive it can take various means. So it was fairly general authority to you, and I think it was for up to 180 days the way we drafted it, and it gave you the opportunity to ask for reports from the owner so that you would have some. So I think you can set the terms under which you waive and forgive receipt.
Okay.
But it says from the owner.
Well, the owner is the one who makes the payment, right? So.
But we're not going to forgive the owner. I mean, we're going to make them pay us the $2,000 and we're going to give that to other people. That's my understanding of what I heard everybody.
Well, then I think you would need to amend it to say is authorized to apply the special use fees received from the owner to rebates to the businesses in the shopping center.
Can we go ahead and vote on it with that amendment?
Well, I'd need a motion to make that amendment.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, further discussion on the amendment?
I'd say
None?
one discussion on that.
Yes, okay.
In reality, if we're going to collect it anyhow, then we don't even need a resolution, right? Because we're going to collect it, and John, you can do anything you want up to $5,000. So if you want to do a grant, if you want to, give $100 to each of those people,
I hear you, Mike.
Kind of a plan. We don't need. I think the problem with the resolution is that now it says we have 180 days. It's implementing a policy, which I don't really think we should be doing. We're implementing some new policy. Now it's going to be up to maybe 6 months. There's potentially new expectations. I think we're going about this all the wrong way. I agree with Mike Clayton. If we're going to do something, we should be thinking about this on a very specific basis, come up with a general plan. If we want to assist retailers, distributors, whomever there are, landlords, we should come up with a plan and do that. But this is a piecemeal approach, which I think we're making a mistake. That's just my thoughts. But now I will be silent.
Well, not necessarily, Mike. And one, I'm trying not to do things within that freedom that I have unless I believe it necessary. And I like to have the 6 of you on board as much as I can get. Plus, I've heard some very good ideas tonight, quite frankly. I'm just trying to think if we just passed a voice resolution that we memorialized later, Bruce, that the mayor is authorized to waive these payments or what else? Because the program Mike's talking about, we'd have to start looking at money and everything else. And again, it may take longer. Second, this was to a specific request that we're responding.
I think, one of the difficulties is that it was easy to say, it was easy to draft something that said, we're not going to collect $2,000. To come up and say, here's $2,000 a month. It probably does take some thought to say, yes, you can make an expenditure up to 5,000 as the mayor, but for you to make expenditures where you're applying a test, creating sort of a matrix where based on square footage or something else and trying to figure out how you're going to go about distributing that $2,000. I guess you can ask the board for authority to, figure out how, but I guess at this point, I'm agreeing with Mike Haber. I think at this point, if you're going to take a little bit of general fund money, money goes in the general fund, and distribute it in some form, it just has to be for a public purpose.
Well, there's no question that legally I might be able to do it, but I'm very reluctant to be picking and choosing when to rebate and when not. I would prefer it be a more systematic board decision.
That's my point, that simply saying you can do it, if we just turn this resolution around so you can distribute it without any further guidance, the board is still not really giving you very much guidance as to how you're going to distribute it. We didn't really agree whether it was based on square footage, we don't really know on what basis you would distribute it. So it's not really giving you the clear authority you want.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded. It needs to be voted on unless I hear a motion to continue, which I'd also be willing to entertain. But I think we need to move forward on this because we're spending an awful lot of time on a very little money. It's just kind of a hard decision with all the pieces in here.
Well, can we vote on this in the negative? Not that I'm telling anyone how to vote, but could this be voted down and then can it be?
This being the amendment or the underlying motion?
The underlying
question, I mean.
The underlying, the resolution that's here, I'd much rather see it say that you're going to take that money and just figure out some way to distribute it. If we wait another 2 weeks, it may be too late for some of these people. And I don't know that it's going to make a lot of difference anyways, because it's not that much money, but I don't know.
Well, okay, procedurally, we have to deal with the amendment first. And that's either withdrawn or vote on. And then we can vote up or down on the resolution, or it can fail for one of a motion.
Okay.
I think you should call the question.
Well, then I'd have to vote on that too, Mike, and that's where I'm trying to get. So we're either going to vote on the amendment or it'll be withdrawn.
So let me ask a clarifying question.
Technically, we should be voting on Trustee Haber, but he's being very acquiescent and I appreciate it.
Thank you. If we vote this down, can we then come to some agreement about how you are going to handle some sort of rebates?
Yep.
I do think we need to address this now because it's a request that has been made. And I think we need to get back to them in a timely manner.
Yes, I do think it needs to be done. And if we're going to be doing something on this, basically, we should pass something tonight. But if you want to try to put together some other program, that we can do with more time.
Would it be possible, just one last thought, because it had been brought up, to collect the money and rather than try and enact a rebate program, to spend it on the kind of Chamber of Commerce notifications you were talking about?
But that's what I was saying that I thought was probably a very good idea, is to pay for the Chamber of Commerce program. Just tell them we decided to do that as a way to try to help them more broadly. I mean, that would be very willing to do that and just tell them that's where we're at. I've even forgotten what the amendment is at this point, I must admit.
I have to.
How about withdrawing the amendment and we'll start fresh from where we're sitting?
I withdraw.
Withdrawn.
Thank you.
Withdrawn.
Okay. So now,
Can we give John $2,500 a month for the purpose, as he sees fit, to help the businesses that might be in trouble? And then,
Yeah.
and then have a dollar limit on it, allow
That
him
would work.
another $500 a month to cover the couple other businesses that might be in trouble that are around the village. And he
Well,
gives
don't-
us every 3 months a report of how it was spent and how it was determined.
I would say do it for the 2 months that we were talking about here, make it equal to what these payments would be. And then that's probably something that I can do within, I'm a little more comfortable with that. Because I don't necessarily have to spend it, I can listen to your ideas, but at least if we really need to give it back, we can.
That's fine. And then you could, I think that so long as you take the direction from us that we want it to be equivalent, whatever system you work out is fine.
Okay, hopefully I can come up with something here. Okay, well, I think we would need a motion then. Let me back up a minute. Council, I don't think your resolution is that broad.
I think the motion that trustee Hollander was making was that the mayor be authorized to apply $2,000 a month from the special use fees that we get from the owner of the shops to assist tenants of businesses in the village, or just
Okay.
business in the village.
And I will be the hard guy decision maker and trying to make sure it gets to the people we want. Is that your motion, Henry?
It is.
Do I
I'll
hear a
second.
second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion on the motion to amend. Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment.
Roll call.
signify-
Oh,
I don't,
it was a
on an
motion to-
amendment?
oh, sorry, it was a motion to amend. Okay, sorry.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Was that Eric?
That was Mike Clayton.
that's
Mike Clayton. Oh, okay, thank you. I wasn't sure which one, so. Okay, the amendment passes. So the resolution is reworded to include Henry's language. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
okay. It's a resolution. Normally that would be a voice vote, but since we are talking about money, I would request a roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain,
Aye.
trustee Clayton.
no,
I'm sorry, was that a no?
no,
Thank you. Trustee Goldstein,
Aye.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you. That is resolution 200402.
Madam Clerk, you should announce the vote total, even though I think we all know what it was.
5
To one.
yes, 1 no.
Thank you.
I don't think we ought to ignore trustee Clayton's and actually trustee Haber's idea that we might want to put some effort forth to seeing what we as a village can do in a situation like this. I may not come to anything, but I tend to agree that a business getting a $75 check from us might be considered a slap in the face, even though the intent is good.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, Henry. I agree that I think it's a good idea. Mike, you're unmuted, as in Mr. Haber. Are you wanting to speak? Okay.
Actually, I was going to suggest, so presumably you will be talking with the owners
Yep.
and you can ask them, absent,
You have
just
given me
pulling
broad
out,
discretion.
supporting you. What can we do to help you?
Yeah, giving you a few bucks good or doing some advertising or something, what's better right now? Second, I'll be touching base with them then to talk about some of the other programs, et cetera, which I think is also advantageous, and see what we can do to help them, period. Which I think is, Mike, yes,
No,
go
it
ahead.
was Rick. Some of the
Oh,
other.
well, Mike turned on also.
Some of the other suburbs in our area are actually looking to give low interest or no interest loans to their businesses. Now they're a lot larger than we are. They have a lot more businesses. They have a lot more tax revenue. but that might be a program we might want to consider.
Well, there are,
having some amount of money in there to do that.
Trustee Jamerson actually stole my speech.
okay. I will tell you,
John, what I want to do is, I think if we put our minds to it, we could have by Friday, we could have a loan for $10,000 per business loan program that we could have instituted that would be meaningful and that would really go a long way towards trying to save some of the businesses.
Mike, I will reach out to you tomorrow and try to pass on some of the things that I've gotten from the governor and other offices by that mailings that are available out there. I don't want to make it sound like Mr. Pritzker just called me up, but there are a number of programs that have been funded, including what I just went through the federal government today. So we should, at the very least, should be putting in their hands those things that might be making other funds available to them. Okay, then moving on to old business, consideration of whether the proposed site plan change is a minor or major amendment of Discover Financial Campus. Again, the question here is not approving the actual work, but only whether or not the work being proposed needs to go to the Plan Commission for a public hearing, or is something that can come before the board in a more complete fashion for us to simply say yes or no without having to have a public hearing. Council, did I word that sufficiently?
Yes.
Okay. Present on the line are representatives of the Discover group, and I guess what I would then ask is what questions the board would have and would like answered in relation to whether they think this is major or minor. I know one proposed before was to the access that would be used to get in and out of the work site and what type of screening would be provided. And with that, let me turn this over to, well, who wants to speak on behalf of Discover?
This is Pete Kennedy.
Okay. Let me turn it over to you, Mr. Kennedy, and if you would address that particular question, and then I will throw it open to the board.
Great, thank you. In regards to the path that we would use to get back to that area in question, we do have a fire lane sidewalk path that we would utilize. We would bring all of the construction equipment through there, and we do have currently a volleyball court and basketball court where we would set up and put all the equipment at. In light of the sight lines, we have a proposal from V3. Not V3, but Brightview, who's our landscape consultant. They have put together a plan to add additional trees. We do have, obviously, a berm that's already built there and in place that is blocking the neighbors. We intend to fill in any gaps to add additional blockage for at any level that we're considering expanding. And we did forward those drawings and pictures over to Pat Glenn last week to review as well, and I believe he sent them in an email.
Can I go, John?
I turned myself off. I had to remember to turn me back on.
Questions came from me. And so I'm assuming that the fire path is heavy enough for a fire truck, but I just wanted to make sure it was heavy enough for all of the heavy equipment that's going to be driven across it. And it sounds like you're confident that it is.
Yeah, Trustee Guy, if I can answer that real quickly, we're going to build most of the cranes and stuff in place. So we'll piece it and bring it back so that we can build it in place.
Okay, great. That's great. And then the other question about the screening, I see that you addressed the screening to the north. I was kind of more concerned with the screening to the west, and I didn't see any pictures there. I don't necessarily need to see those pictures, but that was my concern. I think if you're going to fill in those gaps the way you talked about to the north, and if there are any to the west, I would assume you would do the same thing.
We would, and there are currently no gaps there. We do have, again, the volleyball court that's blocked, and we do have full-size trees there as well. But again, if needed, we will do that as well.
Okay, and then as I looked over the packet that was originally submitted to the village many years ago, that Pat Glenn sent over to everybody. I can't seem to find it now on my computer, it won't come up. But my understanding is that this was originally supposed to be all parking garage, and then the surface lot was added later when you removed some of the parking structure from the design. Correct?
That is correct. It's within, and then this expansion would stay within that original footprint that's on those drawings.
Okay. Well, so my opinion, John, is Norris, is that I see it as a minor change. That's my opinion. I mean, it was originally approved with the parking structure that's now going to be built, and I know it was changed somewhere along the line, and it probably was reapproved without that parking structure there, but I think it turns into a minor change, in my opinion.
As I recall, it was approved with the structure. They wanted to go to building just the surface parking, and we deemed that at the time to be minor, is my recollection of how it went. So now we're undoing that. Are there any other members of the board? Yes, Trustee Chamberlain.
I just wanted to say that I had a question about the site, and I believe Mr. Kennedy has addressed it, that he's going to fill in that one area where you can see the house through the gap in the trees.
That is correct. And there's actually another tree behind it that is not in bloom yet, obviously, which will add additional blockage. So I feel comfortable and confident. And if we had to add additional, we will do so. But talking to Brightview, they seem to think that these 4 would cover those gaps.
Thank you.
What we would do, I'll jump in. If the board finds this as a minor amendment, we would ask them to process getting to a permit in the usual way. And when the drawings that constitute the final permit drawings are ready, we would embody them in a resolution, a formal resolution with the board, adding them to the list of official drawings for the site plan, or, replacing the pages that they're replacing as we've done in the past. So there'll be some follow-up resolution from the board once we have sort of the final design, but all of that can be handled at staff level, basically, if it's a minor amendment.
Right, that's what I wanted to emphasize, is this is not approving the entire project. It just says we should be able to do it without having to go back to the plan commission.
John, I'll move that it be considered a minor change.
Is there a
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of this being determined to be a minor change signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Mike, you're opposed? Was that?
Oh, aye.
Oh, you just got I was going to say, not hearing any nays, I take it to be unanimously approved, because I noticed not everybody got on. Okay, thank you very much. There's no business left on the agenda. I know of no reason to go to executive session. Does anyone have anything for the good of the order? If not, our next meeting is May 5th. I hope that we can all do it face-to-face, but we're almost getting good at this. So everybody stay well, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourn signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Stay well.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.